Day in the life of Artyom. The daily commute can be murder. Dealing with the IT department can take its toll. Finding a good spot in the canteen is tough. The return home is just as arduous. Taking the dogs out can be intense. It's always good, after a long day, to settle down for a well-earned rest.
Mine is the sunlight, mine is...
Yes, Artyom is back and in his most polished, expansive, action-packed and story-driven adventure yet. Now, before I get my full technical analysis up and cover the ray-traced PC version and all of the magnificent elements the 4A engine and team have spent crafting, link to that will be here when up. I wanted to cover the consoles and a brief look at the PC. Artyom's working day battle may have ended, but a console one is now afoot. Grab your ticket, as this metro ride could get bumpy. Now, one thing of note is it's been a bit of a disaster. There's various reasons why these videos aren't up when I wanted them to be. One of the biggest delays has been the PC version, between DX12 driver versions and the Epic Games launcher, which has exacerbated some of the issues, and it really does have some things missing that should be there. And I do this for a living, so I know that this isn't really as good as it should be, certainly with the kind of games that are being launched on it, but that's a conversation for another time. Along with a few other personal factors, but there you go, that's how things go sometimes. Well, moving away from that bit of a rant, resolution is the least important, as I always say, but still relevant within a game's presentation. The various render target buffers have always varied, but geometry or depth is the one we care most about. Now, on base PS4 and Pro, we see a fixed and locked resolution. No dynamic scaling appears to be present on either machine, giving us a native 1920 by 1080p and 2560 by 1440 resolution on both respectively, backed up with a temporal AA that does an incredible job keeping stability and clarity high. This is one of the best IQs I've seen on consoles, with all the fine material properties from fabric weave, scratched leather, dented metals and latex-like skin all coming through with striking impact. It looks incredible both in dark and light across a simply gigantic Moscow landscape.
Take the Aurora back to the safe zone and sit tight there.
Next is the Xbox family, and here we see a different element applied. Dynamic scaling is in effect here with the base S model. IQ is still excellent on this machine, but the sub-HD output is obvious. In quieter sections, it holds within the 1664 by 962 level, with only sky views hitting close to 1080p. Once in action, this can dip to 1600 by 900 and even lower to 1536 by 864. But when the game ramps up the action later on with the opening few hours, not seeing as much load once past the Volga, it ramps up heavily beyond this point. It might even dip even lower than that, but it's certainly dynamic and it's certainly the softest of the lot. Now, the X comes in with a resolution that hits native 3840 by 2160 in all tested sections, but again, when action ramps up, this may dip below, as it likely follows the same DX12 paths as the base and Windows 10 versions. It maintains the cleanest image of the gaggle, and thanks to that superb AA and motion blur, any dips that should arise would be pretty much impossible to notice, aside this kind of in-depth look. That said though, I found none at all. Now, the AA solution does look less aggressive than the Pro, which helps, and it's understandable due to the higher pixel count. The team have used the machines well, with that dynamic scaler helping the base Xbox consoles, in addition to the adaptive VSync they all run. Results here do demonstrate more could be done on the PS4 and possibly the Pro and X as well.
That was intense. Are you okay?
John, wake up, dear.
Is he up yet? Artyom, the Colonel wants you on the bridge. See you later.
Come on, wake up.
Uncle Artyom, Uncle Tokarev has already set his shop up. Wanna go look? It's so cool. Here, Uncle Artyom.
A smoke break. That's good. Damn, this is rough. Well, nothing we couldn't take.
Taking base consoles, they both target 30 FPS, in fact, as all versions do, but they use that adaptive VSync to help out when things get heavy, and they certainly do. Most traversal, exploration and mild combat holds that locked almost always on every machine. The dips and tearing come when in heavy firefights or some of the real-time cinematics. Here the obvious reduction in Xbox alpha effects, volumetrics and such, in addition to that dynamic scaler, all pay off. It can dip and tear, the longer sector streams and saves hit both machines equally. In heavy combat though, the PS4 struggles more, at times tearing 100% of the time to maintain a 33 millisecond frame time. The higher quality alpha effects are clear, filling your view at times, as is the dynamic light precision, which adds up to a lower performance metric during these moments. The S tears and dips also, it's just much less frequently than the PS4. Now I hope they can implement their dynamic scaler here with an equal reduction of alpha buffers, which I think would all go unnoticed but return performance to S levels, or maybe even better. But I'm sure many patches are on the way.
Artyom, it's Duke. We're on final approach. Yeah. See that fire at the very top?
The premium consoles do much better at handling this, with similar segments going unnoticed on the bigger machines. Again, tearing and dips often occur, including sector loads and saves, but the quantity of these is reduced, so it never feels as obvious. Of the two machines, they're pretty much near as damn it in battle and cutscenes. I can see the Pro and X trading blows to a level that makes the gap almost irrelevant. The real-time average at the bottom shows you how close they are, and if you have the premium consoles, either will do a great job of delivering a solid and sharp image across the board on a 1080 or 4K screen. The alpha and volumetric fog are also better here than base machines, but are more in line with the PS4 comparatively than the S. And they also are present in Metro games as a standout overall. One of the things to note is the X and the Pro both suffer equally due to the heavy use of alpha effects in the game and that lighting and volumetric fog. This can obviously cause dips, and you can see comparisons here like for like by the train section, which equally affects the Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro. There's no clear winner here. And these are some of the areas that I think they need to work on. There is something else that's quite stark here though, is the PS4 Pro actually has a different level of volumetrics and lighting than the Xbox One X. You can see it in the comparison of the train section here. Before you say it's different time of day, the lighting is exactly the same. You can see the shadows on Anna's head on the train is exactly the same place on both versions. But the volumetrics are stronger and thicker on the Pro. And I actually think that sometimes in certain points of the game, the volumetrics look much stronger on the Pro. You can see a section here at the beginning of the game where the volumetric emitter just stuck in the middle of the room there beaming into the train station can actually look completely absent on the X, but it's overly blown on the PS4 Pro. Some of this is the gamma output, which is much higher level on the Pro, much lower level on the X, which can cause crush, and that HDR solution on the PC and the consoles looks great, but that does affect the actual gamma levels, and you do get some crushed blacks and clipped whites on the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. So it can kind of sit one side of the fence and the other side of the fence, which is a shame. But really, you don't notice it too much unless you're comparing the versions. And again, the PC is completely different, much more subtle and actually evenly balanced between dark and light. It certainly edges more on the side of darkness, but not quite as dark as the Xbox One X. So some of that may be down to the API calls of DX12, I don't know, but there's definitely a gamma difference between all three versions, and just be aware of that when you're tweaking it for your screen. And certainly for the HDR setup, you need even more time to make sure the balance is correct. But it does look excellent on all three machines. The PC version is, as I say, the best of the lot. For the visual quality settings though, we do see the lowest levels on S, but LODs and draw distances close between the two base machines, with texture streaming being slightly more consistent on PS4, but assets are identical. This carries over to premium consoles, with them having a higher LOD setting and draw distance, which helps long views and object detail stand out between the two levels of consoles. They also use POM to improve depth and detail on snow, mud or other areas, with a sharper resolution aiding the fidelity. Weather effects, driving rain, atmospheric scattering or storm clouds all look excellent, with none losing out over the other. Shadow map resolution and filtering is better on Pro and X, largely due to the bump in resolution, but to be fair, all versions use dynamic lights and AO often, which is another high point of the game itself. Moving over to the PC, we see a large leap in fidelity and options, but you need the machine to do it. Only my Zen-powered RTX 2070 here can achieve the level, and with lesser machines than these top-end cards, reducing the still stunning games more towards those console levels. Hairworks, Physics X, ray tracing and other features bump the PC above the high level of consoles. A reminder of when teams target bleeding edge tech, you can get some incredible leaps. The ray trace lighting model is something I cover in more depth in my other video, but it delivers a more consistent and realistic lighting model than we are used to in games. It does not work on dynamic light sources at all, or indeed interior lighting, instead focusing on one directional light within an area, which predominantly means the sun or moon. The obvious effect is light bouncing from the global illumination trace this offers can give some scenes a darker look, as per my Quake 2 video a couple of weeks ago, but this is far more than just that. The new method of lighting does save on the raster methods by turning off light probe elements, cue maps and other multiple point lights placed within a scene by the lighting artists. Instead, the single point of light and shared ray per pixel allows this singular lighting source to drastically change not only how a scene looks, but how its materials are handled. This shift takes me right back to the software to hardware rendering changes I went through from Quake 2 software and OpenGL render paths. Here DX12's DXR and the bespoke RTX NVIDIA API is the only choice that PC gamers have. I cannot stress how good and more grounded the scenes that rely on this method can look. My only issue is many segments that are not lit from external lighting are completely unaffected, and the opening hours of the game really avoid showing any of this. I have seen other channels on launch showing this as an example, and it's really not valid, and actually not even ray tracing, because it simply does not use the new hybrid method, and is predominantly still a raster lighting method, with all of the point lights and place lighting models and light probes basically taking over the fact that RTX is still probably working in the background, but it just can't find any light sources to path to. You can check out my full technical analysis video for much more on this. The other difference between the PC and the consoles is the lack of tessellation, and it's actually quite a substantial change. Character models, as you can see here with Anna's face, her gloves, the hose pipe on her shoulders is obviously more rounded, there's more detail, there's edging, her glove sticks out, her hat is tessellated, pushing out those ridges. The detail that's added on the additional sections on the PC do add a great deal to how characters look and objects in the scene, but it's also terrain. You can see here as Artyom climbs through the hole in the ground from a scene earlier in the game, the floor looks flat, very bland. It's got the markings there for the tessellated effect, but none of it's running on consoles, but on PC that all gives a raised ridge and depth to the whole floor, looking much better and more realistic, and you miss out on this on the console version from the PC version, which again is a shame, and I would have thought that maybe some of this could have been turned on, but then again, maybe it just works much better on NVIDIA tessellation than AMD tessellation. I don't have an AMD card to test it anymore. This new Metro title is without doubt the best 4A team have told over for the past 5 years. It is as polished, laboured and technically accomplished as anything a much bigger and even exclusive team would have crafted. Some weaknesses do arise and much of that is across every version, but it takes this dark and gritty tale of hope to a whole new level and hopefully audience. Unmistakably a Metro title with all the unique delivery quirks and narrative focus, but raised to a level that stands shoulder to shoulder with the best FPS shooters on PC and consoles. Actually playing the game, the motion blur, the heavy feel of the combat, the muzzle flash shadow lighting, all of those elements and some of the closed off sections instantly takes me back to that Killzone 2 feeling. You can see that Guerrilla and 4A have a very similar rendering path and methods. Horizon's obviously a very different artistically driven game, but this has that Killzone feel ramped up to a technical level that obviously isn't possible on those consoles when they launch, and even the PS4 now. But it does feel and play very similar to that in lots of the combat. Again, it's a cracking looking game and it's one of the best FPS shooters I've played in a long time. Very old school, not centered around anything other than a single narrative driven story. Like I say, there are some issues and bugs in the game, but again, every game is guilty of some of these things, but I cover those more in the technical analysis. It's a great shooter, it's great on all versions. In fact, it's a work of art. I'll catch you on the next one.
What's your situation? Or crawl when you fight?